Mindful Environmentalism and the Ethics of Consumerism by Taylor Rienhart. So, beginning with some background for environmental ethics and consumerist ethics, we have some definitions. In this presentation, the term climate change will refer to anthropogenically caused climatic changes, which are long-term shifts, weather, and temporal patterns caused by emissions from human-made infrastructure and industry. These emissions are greenhouse gases, gases which trap heat in the troposphere and stratosphere, warming global temperatures. These include carbon dioxide, methane, sulfur dioxide, and water vapor. This presentation focuses on human-made aspects of pollution and degradation, so basically anything that is artificial or created in relatively recent years. Finally, it is important to know that fossil fuels are carbon-based fuels, like oil and natural gas, which are used to generate electricity. They release carbon dioxide, a greenhouse gas, when they are burned. The primary causes of climate change are the Industrial Revolution, transportation, and any other greenhouse gas emission. The Industrial Revolution moved production from the home and into factories in the early 19th century, utilizing fossil fuels to power these factories. As industry expanded, companies began to ship their products overseas and receive their material goods from other nations as well. This resulted in the globalized economy we see today, completely run on fossil fuels. Other advancements in life have also been driven by fossil fuels, such as transportation. Most emissions come from cargo ships bringing products and supplies around the world, but also individual cars generate pollution as well. In smaller amounts, public transportation, such as trains and buses, also burn fossil fuels. As stated before, burning fossil fuels releases greenhouse gases, specifically carbon dioxide, which are absorbed into the atmosphere and shift global weather patterns. The effects of climate change are devastating and worsening. With average global temperatures rising, we see ice sheets melting at dangerous rates, droughts increasing in many areas, and rainstorms increasing. Not only do these weather events become more frequent, but they also become more severe. With sea level rises, fires, and other weather patterns shifting, humans are displaced and ecosystems are destroyed. Climate change poses a massive threat to current life on Earth, both human life and the lives of the species which surround us. This destruction, which is 100% human-caused, begs the question, how are we as individuals who participate in this economy and exchange responsible for climate change? What moral obligations do we have to take certain actions or to not take actions? These questions lead to a new section of ethical dilemmas called environmental ethics. Every day, we complete individual actions which pollute our environment, such as driving cars, taking flights on planes, ordering things from Amazon, buying clothing, getting groceries, and doing everything we do in our society. So, how responsible are we? For those who may believe that we have no moral obligations to climate change, this slide depicts how long-held virtues and vices support the environmentalist perspective, which is that of protecting the environment and accepting some moral obligation. Amplifying certain traits and eliminating others has been demonstrated and thoroughly recognized to improve society and enable human flourishing. Positive traits, which are strongly associated with the environmentalist movement, include temperance, or knowing when you have enough, appreciating the items you do have, being aware and empathetic towards people in a worse situation than you, and being generous by giving to those who have less, if and when you are able. Consumerist society wishes us to oppose those. Mindful purchasing is being frugal. Giving and helping others in worse positions or donating to environmental causes doesn't add to the GDP or to the company's profits. Knowing when enough is enough doesn't drive sales, and having empathy for the environment and other human beings is just time spent less focused on what you could be buying. Our consumerist society and marketing structure glorifies these vices, which environmentalism opposes. It is important to note that With the last slide in mind, there are certain actions which are influenced by groups and others which are influenced by individuals. Climate change is a global issue with many contributors, predominantly large companies. Furthermore, it is the government's job to regulate organizations and protect its citizens, whereas citizens' jobs is to vote and be otherwise politically active or involved in their government. So where do individuals fall on the morally responsible? Companies cause the problem, and governments have failed to regulate them, but at the same time, consumers still bought into the market and gave the companies the power that they have. Something that is very important with climate change is the scale. While individual actions may increase overall emissions in an unnoticeable fashion, when the whole world does them, they can be fairly damaging. If one person was to drive to work versus take public transportation, there would be very little difference in the total emitted carbon dioxide. However, if everyone in the world were to drive to work versus everyone in the world taking public transportation to get to work, there would be a drastic difference in the total emissions. Furthermore, there is the issue of accessibility and development. Many countries have not had the same opportunities to develop that the United States has had, and often these countries were abused in order for others to industrialize faster. Fundamentally, morals and ethics pursue a sort of equality where everyone is held to the same standards, given the same abilities, and agrees that everyone should have some sort of freedom. It is therefore up to the individual to take responsibility for their actions and the consequences which inevitably come after those actions. This may suggest that free market capitalism, with no intervention or regulation, could solve climate changes. It is in society's best interest to solve these issues, so people will naturally act in a way which does so, right? Sort of. Kinda wrong. However, industrializing has enabled people to have a much higher quality of life, which everyone deserves. Yet, if everyone has the present high quality of life, no one is able to survive because we simply do not have the resources on Earth to provide for that. Free market capitalism is not a valid solution. It confuses anyone versus everyone, and also seems to assume that Earth is limitless, which we know it is not. Other counter-arguments follow along the line that one person's actions will not stop climate change, nor will it drastically reduce the effects of climate change. While this is technically true, this can be very misleading, which is discussed later on in this presentation. An important distinction in the morality of an action is the ability to do something or to do something else in this case. There is also the matter of fulfilling certain needs as opposed to wants. For example, some people have no other option but to drive everywhere. Maybe because they don't live near public or alternative transportation, or would have to extend their travel time by multiple hours, reaching a point where it becomes unreasonable to ask for them to find an alternate mode of transportation. On the other hand, others may drive by choice and select gas-guzzling cars such as SUVs or sports utility vehicles, leave the lights on all night for convenience, run full cycles of laundry for just one sock, and other unnecessary actions just because they can. Generally, people have more of a moral obligation towards their avoidable or unnecessary actions than those which were done out of necessity. At least that's how our criminal justice system and many other functions of society operate. In this context, it is unreasonable to expect everyone to live off the grid, eat only foods grown in their own backyards, and recycle their urine, or whatever other stereotyped fully clean or true environmentalist actions are taken. By reducing this all-or-nothing method of thinking and enabling a more nuanced understanding of the issues, we increase the accessibility of a more sustainable lifestyle, as people from all situations have something they can manage to do. Additionally, less radical actions will be more accepted by the larger society, so that environmentalist leaders and virtuous people can be role models, as opposed to outcasts. Two ideas which I found key in my research came from pieces on environmental ethics, the first being by Walter Sinnott Armstrong and the second by Peter Wenz. Sinnott Armstrong's main idea was that basically, if all who do not follow a strict regimen are condemned, those who do the worst actions will have no reason to change or improve their actions. I mean, you're going to get condemned anyway, so why not do whatever you want? And Wenz's was that shifting the social norms to increasingly more sustainable lifestyles will have a more positive impact than one person living perfectly or completely off the grid, etc. Both pieces, I find, offer great insight into the nuanced issue and provide a more acceptable framework for analyzing this issue, as opposed to this all-or-nothing thinking. Climate change is obviously very nuanced, and we need to generate action somehow. Smaller steps are easier than big ones, so we shouldn't expect everybody to leap or to jump between two cliffs. Instead, we should build a bridge. The one constant in all of my research and most conversations on the moral responsibility we have towards climate change involves the terms too much. At what point is what we do too much? Where do we draw the line? If one person buys a gas-guzzling car and drives it everywhere, are they morally responsible for climate change? How much are they responsible for? And if they aren't like some believe, then how many people does it take to make an impact? To be responsible? Well, we know that if nobody takes responsibility, nobody will take action in response, and the issue will not go away. In fact, with climate change, it will definitely get worse. While this all-or-nothing thinking is common when people first encounter ethics, there is no right way. Replacing these ideals with better or worse actions gives a more clear plan of action and picture of responsibility or moral obligations. Basically what Sinnott Armstrong was saying. This also increases the applicability of the issue, as society is more likely to reject radical ideas and changes as opposed to gradually shifting the norms. Peter Wenz, basically. Regardless, we know that a big group's small action can have a greater impact than a small group's big action. The final issue when discussing topics of ethics and morality is whether or not we have a right to act a certain way. If we do, then by saying we shouldn't, we contradict ourselves. Industrialization has been associated with greater personal freedoms and higher qualities of life for the past century. However, this is something that climate change challenges. We can still have a sustainable society with freedoms. It would just take more development and or than that what we currently have easily available. Also, climate change threatens those in poverty and in certain geographical regions more than those in others, generating an inequality which could be argued to be greater than that of the benefits. Additionally, we know that for a fact that the actions considered overall harmful to the environment harm future generations. So while one person's actions may not make a dramatic effect on the outcome of climate change, I believe that we need to be mindful of our impact and are responsible for our impacts, for the most part. We, as citizens of this planet, have a responsibility to ourselves and to civilization to protect our existence and ability to thrive. That's basically the fundamentals of what society is built on. Simultaneously, we cannot be held fully accountable for actions which were forced upon us. For example, we cannot all be expected to walk to school and or work if we live 30 miles away. We cannot always make ethical clothing purchases when our only options are made with slave labor. We can, however, do what we can do, within reason. We can purchase more efficient cars, we can carpool, we can buy from brands that are making changes, and we can take public transportation when available. Normalizing these actions will have an overall positive impact on society as we continue to work towards a greener world. We know that we need to take action, and forgiving ourselves for things out of control and working to follow virtues within our social limits will maximize our change. Companies and the government will hold a much greater responsibility towards the environment, but we still have a responsibility to inspire change and justice. Again, this is from the individual perspective and not talking politics and what should be done. Thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed my presentation.